In this video, we'll be talking about chemical exfoliation. And remember, this is just an introduction to the products that you'll be using and what you can expect from them. Nothing to do with procedures, applications, or such. As we take a look at our chemical exfoliants, I started over here with the chemical peel because these must be done by a physician. In our industry, we use the word chemical peel as the umbrella that covers everything. And when we do that, we can confuse ourselves. So at the state board, if you see the word chemical peel, it must be done by a physician or under the direct supervision of a physician, which means he has to be in the room standing there watching you, which probably is not going to happen. And the chemical peels that fall into this classification are the Gessner peel, the Biaggi blue, and anything that contains resorcinol and our phenol. The Biaggi blue is a combination, oh, I forgot to put TCA up there. Oh my goodness. Okay, TCA. TCA. Tricetochloric acid. And the reason I so conveniently forget about that one is because it's on the list of you cannot do it for the state board. But if you keep it in the proper pH, you can use it. The same thing with phenol. Phenol is on the list of chemical peels for the state board. But in the California Act, and those of you who've had Cosmo 10B, you know that the Cosmo Act is where they give you a list of things you can't do. And in one of the articles, it's in Article 1, not sure what the exact section is, it said that you cannot use phenol greater than 10%. So as long as phenol stays 10% or below, you can use it. But 10% of what? So once again, on my pH scale, I have to understand factoring. I have to understand what the manufacturer says the pH of their product is. Normally, the FDA will not sell anything less than 2 pH. 0, 1, and 2 are classified as extremely strong acids, which means they're caustic, which means they can burn. If I get a burn from a chemical exfoliant, what is proper first aid? Rinse it off and apply an alkaline. I left the alkalis off of this pH scale because I was running out of boardroom, and our chemical exfoliants are always below 7 because they're acidic. So when I'm looking at my pH scale, the determining factor is the type of skin my client has. And once again, how do I know what to use on whom to get the results I want? So if I'm looking at dry skin like I have dry, very dry skin. If the manufacturer said their product has a pH of 2, all that means is it is 100 times more acidic than my skin. I'm really not going to see a benefit. All right, it's going to be like, I'm going to go, I paid for this? Seriously? I don't notice any difference. However, if I have normal skin with a pH of 5, 4 is 10 times more acidic, 3 is 100, and 2 is 1,000. This client will see an improvement. However, my oily skin, acneic skin client will benefit the most, because if my skin comes in at a pH of 1, that means a pH of 5 is 10 times more acidic than the 6. It means a pH of 4 is 100, pH of 3 is 1,000, a pH of 2 is 10,000. Now remember, nothing goes to the skin that exceeds a ratio of 10,000. Then it becomes unsafe. So it's not so much about the percentage of active ingredient as it is what is the pH. Now, a lot of times when you're looking at SDSs, instead of giving you a pH, they're going to give you a pKa, which is more of a description on how an acid dissociates in its liquid. So the example that I give is if you're making Jello at home and you put the gelatin in cold water and you stir it up, you can see all the gelatin floating around. It does not dissolve. Okay, so there is no, in chemistry, there is no dissociation. So that represents a very weak acid. So a weak acid is going to be between 5, 6, and 7. These are classified, 4, 5, and 6 as strong, weak acids. The strong acids are 0, 1, and 2. The same thing on the alkaline side of the street. My weak alkalis are 8, 9, and 10, and the strong ones are 13, 14, 12, 13, and 14. So nothing goes to the scalp that it's at 12 or more, because it exceeds my 10,000 ratio for the skin that my hair is growing out of. When you're using depilatories, your pHs will be on the alkaline side. So when you did your research for your depilatories and you got your SDS, you saw that it had a higher pH. So now, when I'm looking at the Gessner, Obagi Blue, Resorcinol, Phenol, and TCA, TCA is going to come under this heading. It's not a percentage, it's a pH. So as long as the pH stays within this safe range, I can use it. But the state board answer is no, because it's a chemical exfoliant, chemical peel. So the same thing with my TCA. These two remain. You cannot do them, okay, because they're classified as peels. My Resorcinol, Obagi Blue, and Gessner. These are on the list of you can't do them in the salon. Then I step over here, and I started with the weak ones because we don't really discuss them too much, but the enzymes are safe to use on everybody's skin type. It doesn't matter whether what the texture is, how much pigmentation they have or they don't have. It is okay for everybody. So if you have a client who wants a chemical exfoliant and you say you're not, it's not a good idea for me to do an alpha or a beta, then she still wants it. But you can give her an enzyme and you're going to be safe with that. And the enzymes are papain, they come from papaya. Bromelain comes from pineapple. And of course we all know that a pumpkin comes from a pumpkin. And these are classified as enzymes and they're safe. And when you're in your chemical exfoliation class, the instructor will probably give you examples on how to make them and how to apply them and what is good for each person's type of skin. Over here, under my alpha hydroxy and beta hydroxy acids, these are the most common, these are the most popular. So under my alpha, I have my glycolic acid, I have lactic acid. The glycolic comes from sugarcane. The lactic comes from either dairy and or molasses. So I need to be sure that if it's coming from a dairy, that my client isn't lacto intolerant. If she's lacto intolerant and it's from molasses, it is probably okay, but you would take a patch test to make sure that she wasn't going to have an allergic reaction. And your alphas are basically for dry, mature skin because they're water soluble. And when you're looking at the epidermal effect, it says diminished cellular cohesion. So we'll come back to that in a minute. When I look at my beta hydroxy acids, they come from salicylic acid, which normally comes from aspirin. So if my client has an allergy to aspirin, this is probably not a good choice. However, wintergreen is also nature's salicylic acid, white birch, and then there's one other I don't have my handle on, but right now in your chemical exfoliation class, there's a complete handout. In fact, there's one in your module right now as we speak. In module 6, you have your chemical peel handout, and all of this information is in it in detail. My beta is for oily acneic skin. Beta hydroxy is oil soluble. Alpha is water, beta is oil. Alpha sits on the surface of oily skin, cannot penetrate, cannot do anything because oil and water don't mix. When I'm using my salicylic acid, because it's oil soluble, it will actually penetrate down into the pore, interact with the oil that's in the oil gland and in the pore, and I have a deeper exfoliation. So I'm going to have better results on my oily actinic skin with a beta. So the main difference between an alpha and a beta is alpha is water soluble and beta is oil. Now you have lots of cleansers and lots of product that, especially cleansers. Our cleanser contains beta hydroxy acid. Why? It's not water soluble. There's absolutely no benefit. It's going to wash right off. So don't purchase a cleanser based on the fact that it has a beta hydroxy acid in it. You're paying more for something that is totally ineffective, and you can understand why. Now, when we look at the dermal effect that the alphas and the betas have, we're looking at what your handout calls diminished cellular cohesion. Well, maybe you don't even have any idea what those words mean. So let's backtrack to the skin. Okay, this black line represents your basement membrane. Underneath it would be your dermis, but remember these are only epidermal, so I only put the epidermis up here. The basement membrane is the barrier, transdermal barrier, dermal, epidermal junction where the two connect. This barrier prevents anything from getting into the dermis, which is why you have to use electricity if you want to have any benefit down here. But hemidesmosomes comprise your basement membrane, and they make up the stratum germinativum, which is the living stratum, the last layer or first layer, whichever way you want to look at it, of your epidermis. Included as they move up, I changed colors so you would see the difference. As these cells move up, you have your stratum spinosum as it moves forward. Now, I still have my hemidesmosomes in here, okay, because they're the connected. That is what the word cohesion means. It means it sticks like glue. So these hemidesmosomes have a glue type substance, kind of like when you step in gum. You know, it keeps everything together. As the cell moves up and becomes the stratum germinativum, the hemidesmosomes begin a conversion and to become desmosomes, because in my stratum spinosum, remember, this is where keratinization begins. This is where the cells truly begin to lose their moisture. They become more flattened. Dehydration will show up here very rapidly. And so as my hemes are moving into my spinosum, they come out regular desmosomes into the stratum lucidum, which is very thin and almost not there. And then they get into and become the stratum corneum. The stratum corneum is flat. I made them flat because there's absolutely no moisture. And these sheets of scales are glued together with desmosomes. That's cellular cohesion. The cells of the epidermis are glued together. Notice out here now it says diminished. This is the effect that your alpha and your betas have on the desmosomes. They diminish or reduce the ability of these cells to stick together. In other words, you come unglued, so to speak. And these cells are called squamous cells. This is where you will see squamous cell carcinoma, which is a skin cancer in the outer layer of your epidermis in the stratum corneum. Then you have, remember I said the stratum germinativum was the living stratum. It's referred to as your basal layer. So basal cell carcinoma is located right here in your stratum germinativum. Melanoma, on the other hand, is a black mole type dot, and it gets into the other layers of the skin and into muscle, and it can be fatal if it's not caught quickly. So if you ever see a dot, especially with the woods lamp, if you see a black dot that looks like a period at the end of a sentence, or you see an irregular shape, then you need to take a picture of it, and you need to send that with her to the dermatologist, although he's going to do it himself. But always refer any black dot that you see under the dermis, because remember, the woods lamp shows you down into the dermis. So if I see a black dot down here under my woods lamp and I don't see it out here, she needs to be referred to a physician, because it could be, and don't scare her to death, oh my goodness, you have what could be melanoma. Just say, I see a black dot under here in the woods lamp, and I need you to go see a physician to make sure it is not melanoma. Stay on the positive side so that you'll be told it is not. We had a client come into the beauty college, and she had a black dot on the side of her nose right here, and you could not see it except with the woods lamp. So I asked her, did you have any dry, flaky, peely skin on the side of your nose? And she goes, yeah, I did, but I scratched it off and it went away. I said, well, you need to go see a dermatologist, because when you have basal cell or squamous cell carcinoma, they're flaky and peely. So I go, it's one of the signs of skin cancer. I didn't talk about the other, okay? But I said you need to go have it checked out. We didn't see her for about 6 or 7 months. And then she came back to the beauty college and she said, I want to thank you. You guys saved my life. She goes, that little black dot was melanoma, and it was growing into my nose. It wasn't coming out. It was growing in, and my doctor said I would have been dead in 6 months. So when you see things that are not, I'm going to put this into the heading of normal, you always need to refer them to a physician. Okay. So diminished cellular cohesion means I'm going to unglue the squamous cells. It's called desquamation or desquamatization. We use the word exfoliation, but we're going to be switching over to these more medical type terms, because my client needs to know that I have an education and that you know what you're talking about. You need to make sure, if you can, that you use professional products and professional words. I say professional products because if she can buy it on Amazon, why does she need you? If she can buy it at CVS or Target, why do I need you? If I can buy it from my Avon lady, hello? And don't diminish that. Don't badmouth, because you need to know that Avon's scientists were the first one to come up with the alpha hydroxy acid, and they marketed it in their product called Anew, and they patented it for 5 years. Nobody had heard of an alpha hydroxy acid until the Avon chemists discovered it, marketed in a product called, their line is called Anew, and it was very effective because it was marketed for housewives who don't know anything about skincare, so it was very mild. So they would have no kickback, no burning of the skin and stuff like that. For some people, it was very, very effective. They patented that for 5 years because you obviously can't patent a plant. Okay, it doesn't work that way. But for 5 years, nobody could market an alpha hydroxy acid, and after that 5th year, they are all over the place because of their benefit. So once again, when you're choosing product, always choose professional, if you can, except for when I tell you to make it yourself. Okay, and that's going to be your skin fresheners and your own hyaluronic acid. I won't call that professional, but if you're a professional and you're marketing it that way, then it is a professional product, isn't it? So always use professional and always use the correct terminology, and it wouldn't hurt to have a graph of this in your consultation room so that when you're talking to your client and you're showing her on the camera what her skin looks like underneath and you're explaining this to her, she'll have a thorough understanding and her expectations won't be exceeded or not exceeded. But did I say that right? Probably not. Let's put it this way. Everything is about expectations. If you go to the Outback and you order a steak, you have a certain expectation that it's not going to come to you like one from Spire's restaurant. And if it does, you're looking at this going, I don't think so. Likewise, if I'm at Spire's and I order their steak, I don't expect it to come like I would get at the Outback because I'm not paying that price. Don't cheapen yourself. You are worth the money that you need to make because what I'm paying for is up here. Your knowledge and how do I know what to choose to use on my client. And if my product, let's say it has a pH of 1, then it's too strong for my client who has a pH of 6. I have to dilute it. All right? I need to understand that just because a manufacturer gives you a pH doesn't mean that you can use it on everybody and get the same result. She's paying for your choice of product. Is it an alpha, a beta, or an enzyme? Is it a TCA at the proper pH? And have I chosen it for the skin type to get the effect that she's coming in for? These are very important items for you to think about when you're in the Cosmo 38C class and they're giving you your classes on how to do chemical exfoliation.